Hello everyone, welcome to Hello Ilandia on 103.2 Dublin City FM. This is Kasia Forrest speaking, and I'm with my guest, a Buddhist teacher from US, Eugene Trak. Hello Eugene.
Hello, hi.
Tonight we are going to talk about how to use Buddhist methods to help us in daily life, but let's start from the very beginning. And I would like to ask you, who is Buddha, Eugene? Who is Buddha for you?
Buddha, in the way of Buddhism that we practice in the West, in our lay Diamond Way Buddhist centers, Buddha is a friend. Buddha is a great example. We do not relate to Buddha as a god or a person. And of course, there was a historical Buddha, Shakyamuni, who taught 2,500 years ago. And this being realized the true nature of mind, reached full enlightenment, shared the teachings, and then main goal of this being was to share the teachings and to bring all beings on his level of realization. And he spent 45 years after him reaching enlightenment teaching and sharing his knowledge. He wanted people to get methods to help themselves, rid themselves from suffering and confusion. And so 2,500 years ago and now 2,500 years later, we work with the same methods because these methods were received from Buddha, historical Buddha, by his students, realized and passed on to their students. And this is how this alive transmission of liberating teachings of the Buddha reached us here in the modern world through direct transmission from this teacher to student. And we received the Buddha's teachings in this life. We received it from our master, who is our root Lama, Lama Ole Nyudel, the lay Buddhist Lama from Denmark. And Buddha is never perceived as a god or a outer entity. Buddha is seen as an example. And when we say Buddha, although that was a historical person who became Buddha, we actually mean the state of mind that this person attained, and we call it the Buddha is the state of mind that was reached and shared with the students. And this is the goal of our path and our practice through the methods which were passed on to us, to reach the same level of mind, the same level of realization as the historical Buddha and all the lamas from Buddha all the way to us. So basically, we are aiming at the same state that the historical Buddha realized, and the goal of our practice is to bring our mind on a level where we can effectively help others.
Eugene, Albert Einstein said once, if there is any religion that would cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism. I just want to ask, do you think of Buddhism as a philosophy, religion, or anything else?
So, in relation to the Einstein's quote about science and Buddhism, Lama Ole once, our Lama, our root Lama, Lama Ole Nyudel, once said that there is no religion above truth. And he said that if at some point we would realize that the science is right and the Buddhism is wrong, the Buddha himself would want us to follow the science, because it was not about religion and it was not about your personal conviction, it's about truth. Then there is no religion above truth. We all are trying to find the truth, and then hopefully we have methods to reach there. For me, Buddhism, I came to America from communist Russia 30 years ago. So when I was growing up in Russia, all quest for religion or spirituality were effectively blocked. So when I never actually had any search for spiritual values or God or religion or some spiritual path, but it happened so that I met Buddhism in California in 95, and I started to apply the methods, and I just realized that the Buddhism for me is just a mental hygiene. Really, it's like when we brush our teeth, we know why we do it, because if I don't brush my teeth, then they will not feel pleasant to myself and to people who are around me. And moreover, if I do not really apply this oral hygiene, then the teeth will just rot and fall out. So basically the same thing with the meditation, Buddhist methods for me. It's a mental hygiene, because when I go through my day, I inevitably pick up some negativity. I inevitably pass some judgment, and I would exhibit lack of compassion in one circumstance, and I would just exhibit lack of patience in another, and I just get irritated about something else. So all in all, good life, but we inevitably get little dust on the clear, glass of our mind, clear mirror of our mind. So the meditation, it's like a mental hygiene. After the meditation, minds get just totally cleared. A lot of space is present in mind, and all this negativity and all these incidental obscurations are wiped out through the power of meditation, which bring about clarity, brings a lot of space in the mind. And so when you have clarity and space in the mind, then you know what's going on in this mind, and you know what to do with it in the moment that it happens.
So maybe some listeners would like to know, how do you do it? This mental hygiene is a quite abstract term. What are the most essential points of Buddhism, so?
Buddhism is so vast, and there are different methods, and Buddha taught many different people, and he offered different levels of Buddhism, and based on the certain level that people were on. So he would offer people what people could take and use right away, and he would not overburden people with information or levels and methods that people could not use. Basically, the main point of Buddhism for me is to establish a regular practice of meditation, because of course it's important to know the information, read books, and understand what Buddhism is all about. So you know the boundaries of the teachings, and you know what the Buddha taught. It's important, but the information on its own will never make you happy, and will never change your mind. You just read the book, and then you are amazed by the ideas, but then you put the book back on the shelf, and you keep going about your life, and your deeply ingrained tendencies and your reactions, habitual reactions, are pretty much stay the same. That's why Buddha suggested to solidify this information through the deep psychological methods, which called meditations. And these meditations, they are designed by liberated and enlightened lamas in a way that they press countless subconscious buttons, and over time they are capable to facilitate the fundamental changes in our perception, and we're able to work with our tendencies, and we're able to become masters of our mind. We become powerful masters instead of the powerless servers.
Your answer was quite practical and straight to the point. You are running a very successful business. Do you find when running your company that Buddhist practice supports your work?
First of all, I would not say that I am running very successful business. My business is doing well, but it takes a lot of work. It's like when you're self-employed, then you know that sometimes things go better, sometimes things go worse, and sometimes clients come, and then sometimes there's weeks or months when the clients don't come. But it's working well because we work it, and we don't give up, and it's going well, but I never stop working on my business, because if I stop, then the funnel will become narrow, and then it will not be fun. So, that being said, I tell you that without Buddhism, I would not have a business at all. Because when I go and talk to my clients, then I apply the attitudes and the ways of communicating with people based on what I learned from Buddhism and what I solidify in my meditations. And basically, one of the levels of Buddhist teachings in the great vehicle in the Mahayana tradition, the main idea that this method was given to people who had surplus to also help others. Not just rid themselves of suffering, but they also wanted to help others, their family, their friends. Some people care about their countrymen, some people care about neighbors. So for people who have surplus for others, these methods were given, and the main principles of this level of Buddhism is to apply compassion and wisdom in balance. So if you become too compassionate, then you become too soft, and the compassion turns into a pity. But when you have too much wisdom, then you are cold and harsh, and you pass judgments without being kind. So the certain balance is necessary. So when you practice, and how do you know? Through doing. So you apply the methods, and then after some situation, you go home and you think, yeah, I was too harsh. So there was a little bit less compassion that was necessary. And then you just become too soft, and then you did not achieve your goal. And then you think, hey, maybe I should have used a little bit of common sense and wisdom. So basically, when we start working with beings, with people, trying to help them, we develop this healthy balance of compassion and wisdom. So when I go and I talk to my clients and try to close the contracts, we run a small web design company with my wife, and then I come to my clients, I talk to them like I talk to my family, like I talk to my friends. So I try to identify with their needs, what they need. So I try not to just see a dollar sign when I see my clients, and not just see the cash cow that people who will pay my rent. I just try to also identify with mainly I would try to identify what their true needs are. And I try to listen to them. And when I understand what they really need, I try to deliver it. Because my clients would not be interested in just a pretty website. They would be interested on return on investment. So I need to be very diligent about to deliver something for them. So it's called to be compassionate, it's called to be honest and tell people I can do this or I cannot do this. And also the communication, I try to be myself. I try to be sincere and honest. I try to be kind. And when you deal with complete strangers, people who find you online and on the website, and then when you apply these methods, people feel something from you that they don't feel usually in the business world. They feel that you care about them. And when the people feel that you care about them, this is the very surprising thing in our day and age, because sometimes Lama Ole once said that in this day and age you cannot surprise people with anything, because if you are rich, there is somebody richer. If you are strong, there is somebody stronger. You are good looking, beautiful, then somebody more beautiful, more good looking will come along. But the only one thing that you can really impress people this day is kindness, because the true kindness they might felt from their mother a long time ago, and she might not be around anymore. So when you come to people on a level of business with a sincerity and with trying to identify their true needs, then they open up to you and they reciprocate in a way. And actually this is the best thing for business, because when people feel care, they open up to you and they would like to work with you, and it's a win-win. So I actually benefit from what I learned in Buddhism in the level of how to communicate with people, how to sincerely to communicate to them my needs and try to incorporate their needs into whole equation, because I also need to look after my company and I need to pay rent. So it just brings the whole conversation from the level of trying to get ahead in life to just try to incorporate this being in my wish for happiness and see how I can benefit him in the process or her in the process. And it's a very great tool for everyday's life. And it's not even business. Bus driver, girl who makes you coffee when you are standing down in line. If you treat people the way you want to be treated, then they reciprocate, and you just make people into your friends, into your allies. And then when you're surrounded by great people, then your comfort zone grows, and it just becomes more and more and more, and then you can approach even more people, and it's just a never-ending show of richness.
Eugene, the Buddha's teachings, called the Dharma, can be challenging sometimes because it goes against the ego, basically. It can make people feel quite insecure. Did you yourself ever have any resistance to the teachings?
One thing that you said is absolutely correct, because when we start to practice Buddhist teachings, we inevitably start to notice certain character traits that we have, and the certain tendencies that we have. And there is, if you look in the mirror and you see an ugly face, you cannot really blame the mirror. And this is like if we see that something comes up in our mind which we don't like, then there is nothing to push against. And what is difficult sometimes is to look in the mirror and accept, yes, I have this tendency. I always do this thing. And when we become Buddhists, actually, then we start to really not run away from it, and we try to address it. Because Buddhism starts when people take responsibility for their actions. Buddhist teachings maintain that everything that happens to us or with us have to have something to do with us. Otherwise, it would never happen to us. It would happen to our neighbor. So if anything happens to us, positive or negative, we have something to do with it. We single-handedly put some seeds in our subconscious through our actions of body, speech, and mind, which are now manifesting as beautiful flowers or difficult circumstances. So it's counterproductive and quite stupid to push against something that you are responsible for. So the main thing that is difficult is actually to face the music and look in the mirror and say, yes, I am doing it constantly. Yes, I am constantly losing patience when I talk to my father on the phone. Yes, I am constantly not paying attention to what my girlfriend tells me about my certain behaviors. I just don't want to listen to this and I just run away. So this is difficult. But again, if you want the truth, then you have no choice. You have to face the tendencies, and the Buddhism gives the methods to change it and make your life into whatever we want. So this is challenging, to admit that I am the reason for my own confusion and suffering.
How did you find Lama Oleso?
I mean, I met him because my situation happened, so I was not looking, but I basically hit the rock bottom and I could not find the meaning in life. And I had a lot of bad habits, mental habits and habits like everyday's habits. And I did not know what to do, and I was kind of at the end of my rope. And then it happened so that somebody mentioned about this Buddhist Lama coming to town, and maybe you can go and listen and maybe you get some meaning from it. And somehow I went, and somehow what Lama was telling made sense to me. And the main thing that I took away from the lecture is that there are methods which I can use in order to make sense of my life. But how, based on my friends who I know, there are a few ways that people meet Buddhism and they meet their root Lama or their guide or teacher. Some people come to Buddhism from surplus and some people come to Buddhism from deficiency. So in my case, I was broken down and I did not have much surplus. So when I met the Lama and when I got the teachings, I treated them like a medicine for the terminally ill man. That's how Buddha at once qualified his teachings, that sometimes the teachings, they could be like a medicine for somebody who is very, very ill. So this poetic example, that's how I felt when I met Buddhism. And then I started to apply methods, and a few years later things started to open up and my inner tendencies started to change and the joy started to appear and the meaning in life started to emerge slowly. But a lot of people meet Buddhism from surplus. They are great people, they don't have really seriously negative habits and tendencies, and they have a lot to show for their life, and they are great and they are joyful and they are happy and they take care of their people. And then they meet Buddhism somehow. I don't know how people, the karmic accumulation, good impressions come together. It's a very big fortune to meet the true teacher. So in my case, it was also probably some positive impressions accumulated, that I was able to find a way out of my predicament, out of my dead-end life. But then a lot of people have a great life already, and then they meet the teachings or they see the poster, oh, Lama is speaking about Buddhism, they go, they listen, and they say, yes, I always knew, I always thought that something like this exists because I always thought so, but now I know that there was a Buddha and he gave the teachings and there are methods and I can make my life even better. And they start practicing, they go to the local Buddhist center and their life, explodes with even more joy and more meaning. So it doesn't matter how people step on the Buddhist path. One thing is for sure, that this path and these methods transform people's mind, and happiness is inevitable. Joy and meaning are inevitable as a result of Buddha's teachings. Because these teachings are aiming at making people independent, strong, joyful, and capable of helping others.
Eugene, you said a lot about Buddhist methods. Could you say something about the power of mantras? What are the benefits of the mantras?
For people who don't know what mantras are, it's just certain syllables. They have different powers and they have different meaning. And so these syllables, if recited or repeated, they have a power of pushing certain subconscious buttons and change certain thing within our person, within our being. There are different mantras which are aiming at developing more compassion. There are mantras to develop fearlessness. There are mantras to develop wisdom. It's a different Buddha aspects represent different facets of our enlightened mind, and there are enlightened joy, enlightened compassion, enlightened wisdom. And when we say these mantras, we just get closer to our own innate joy, our own innate fearless, our own innate compassion, our own innate wisdom. And so different mantras, they act as, and they also, our Lama Ola always he sometimes says that the mantra is a protective sound. So when you say the mantra, your mind is kind of like protected by the, like all those, like it's oil film protects your mind. And when whatever negativity appears in this mind, it just slides off through this oily surface of your mind. And it's a like poetic example, but actually it's a protective sound. In the circumstances when you feel irritated and angry, and you will start to repeat the mantra of the Buddha of loving eyes Buddha, which is the Buddha of compassion, Avalokiteshvara in Sanskrit or Chenrezig in Tibetan, the mantra Om Mani Padme Hung. So it's very well-known mantra in all of Buddhism, and in our Diamond Way style of Buddhism, we also use this mantra. So when you start repeating this mantra under your breath or loudly, then the effect is that the negativity and anger slowly dissipate. And when people who are disturbed by very strong disturbing emotion of anger and negativity, ill will, this mantra and this meditation on Buddha of compassion is even prescribed by the Lama to do certain number. And my own experience that after repeating the mantra Om Mani Padme Hung many thousands times, then you just cannot find the anger anymore. Of course, it's not just mantra, it's a meditation in which you imagine certain things and you send the rainbow light from your heart to the very people that you think did you wrong or did something to you and who you are having these disturbing emotions towards. And you just undo this by piling a lot of good energy and a lot of good wishes towards these people, because the negativity and negative connection with some people, as we already discussed, it takes two to tango. So we have something to do with this anger that we feel towards this person. It's not that they are there alone. We have a connection, and this connection has happened to be negative. Otherwise, we would love them instead of hating them. So how to undo the negative connection? Pile up a lot of good wishes on top of it. So during this meditation and saying this Om Mani Padme Hung mantra and sending the rainbow light from our heart to the hearts of these people who we're supposed to be hating instead. So we just undo this negative connection, and then after a few thousands of repetitions, you just cannot find this anger anymore. You just know, oh, these people, yes, these people, but there is no intensity in this feeling. You're not burning, you're not shaking, you are not disturbed so much. So you kind of like dissolve this. And that's the, you can say, magical power of these mantras and these meditations.
How you can maintain a pure view and not be naive?
Because if we are searching for the highest truth of our life, then one of the teachings that I heard many times from our Lama Ola Nyudo is that the highest truth is highest joy. And how to understand it is that when you feel joyful and happy, you are much closer to the truth of your life and of your mind than when you are shaking with anger, or you're disturbed by jealousy, or you are overwhelmed by greed. So if people feel good in general, good about themselves and about others, this is the state which is closest to the natural true state of our mind. So basically, to see world as beautiful, to see people as having a lot of good potential, would be to see things and people on a level which is much closer to the ultimate level of truth than to see world as the awful place and people as the evil, bad beings. And Buddhism doesn't believe in evil. Buddhism believes in different levels of intelligence. There are no evil people. There are no people possessed by devil or something. People just stupid, basically. Because nobody in the right mind would do anything knowingly which would bring suffering. If somebody would know that they are doing something that would bring suffering, they would never do this. But some people do a lot of unspeakable things to themselves and to others. And the only reason, because they think that it's a good idea in the moment when they're doing it. If they would ever think that what they're doing is harmful for themselves and others, they would never do this. So basically, here you go. If people were smarter, they would never do anything which brings suffering, because what goes around inevitably comes around. So if you emanate a lot of anger, you emanate a lot of hate, a lot of negative vibe in the environment, then that's what comes back to you. So basically, it's not being naive to see the world as a beautiful place. You have the only one day, and it's up to you how you perceive this day. And it can be anything you want. You want it to be hell, you can make it to be hell. You want to see it as a good, beautiful place, you can condition your mind to see it this way. And guess what? It will become that, because everything is our mind.
I really like what you said, that everything is our mind. Eugene, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. And I would like for you to close us with whatever is on your mind at the moment.
Thanks for having me. And I love to speak about Buddhism, because Buddhism is the liberating teaching. You asked me previously if I think it's a religion or philosophy. If you even think that Buddhism is a religion, then at least we need to qualify that this is not the religion of belief. You don't have to believe blindly. Buddhism is the religion. If you call it a religion, it at least can be called religion of experience, because Buddha never said to believe blindly, or our Lama to 2500 years later doesn't tell us believe blindly. They all say, hey, check everything, verify everything, make sure you do understand everything that you're doing, and make sure that this is truth for you, because Buddhism is not for everybody. There are many different people, and it's like different heads need different heads. Not one head fits all. Some people need other spiritual approaches, but it happens so that a lot of my friends find a lot of meaning in the liberating teachings, where you can actually check the teachings and find the truth of these teachings for ourselves in our daily life. I don't want to find truth many years from now. I want to see this truth every day in every moment of my life, with my family, at work, with my employees or my employer, in the bus, on a bus stop, at the store, with the people who I never met. I just want to experience everything as this pure world populated with the beautiful beings.
Eugene, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.